So I've gotten some comments on prior videos that I suffered from poor audio quality, and I have to say, guilty as charged. But I don't expect to get that claim going forward, because my God, this is a nice microphone I'm sitting right in front of. And I didn't go out and buy it. I had this microphone, actually, a whole bunch of microphones. I used to do some podcasts and some audio dramas and stuff. And I invested in some wonderful microphones, like the one I'm using right now. But they were here in LA, in this apartment, which no one is in anymore, because my marriage fell apart. And, well, my daughter just turned 17. She's actually taking her driving test right now. And I just don't need this apartment anymore to come out and, play father and active involved for, my daughter who's now in her late teens. So I'm leaving Los Angeles. Cue up the sad music, and it is hard. I'm going to say right now, it is kind of hard closing down this place and leaving behind this life of, I've lived on and off here in Los Angeles for like 20 years, but I'm mostly becoming a Dallasite now. It's going to allow me to save money, which will certainly help keeping my expenses low as I'm out on the road doing comic book shows, living the life. And I've done a lot of psychotherapy throughout the years. Not that it seems to have helped me in the marriage department, but one part that helps me, at least me, my most authentic self, is just to be very honest, which I'm going to do with you today. So this video, I'm going to go over Guinevere and the Divinity Factory. I just got the lettered results in. I don't have the cover yet with the logo, but I'm going to go over the lettered pages, as well as just talk about the campaign and how it went. But, I want to let you know my emotional state in laying down this track. I'm a bit blue. I'm like the trapeze guy, who was swinging on one trapeze, and he goes all the way to the end of the arc, and he has to let it go, and then just kind of free fall and grasp out for that other trapeze, which is, it kind of describes my life right now. I've got some great, wonderful things going next Friday, so a week from today, which I'm recording this on January 11th. Friday the 18th in Dallas, there will be a premiere for my movie that I was executive producer on, Standoff at Sparrow Creek Lumber, and I've invited all my fans to come down. I'm going to put a link in the description for this video if you want to come down and meet me. Of course, you need to be in the North Texas region to do that, but what a wonderful experience. And this wasn't just a vanity project. This was something we did for money, and I just got an email a couple of days ago with the payout dates, and my investors are pleased, and I'm getting a lot of pat on the backs, because this was a project that I was spearheading, hence me getting executive producer credit. I was the one who was telling to my investors, this is something we need to invest in, and Rolling Stone has listed it as one of the movies to watch in January, which was very nice of them. So, good things happening there. Guinevere and the Divinity Factory successfully was funded successfully, I should say, on both Kickstarter and Indiegogo. So that's good. But there are other things going on. It did hit the goal. It didn't hit my private hopes and expectations. So I have to allow myself some level of disappointment there. I had hoped it would be a lot bigger. And not to be ungrateful, I appreciate everyone who has given me their support. But I also have to be honest and say, wow, I thought it would be bigger. and that comes from, look, I'm in the entertainment business. If, for instance, we take a movie like Ghostbusters, the all-female remake of it, where they lost a bunch of money because they spent more than people bought tickets for. The people behind the movie don't come out and go, it was a wonderful, smashing success, and I love it, and I wouldn't change anything. Well, maybe they do, but at some point you have to go, well, we'd hoped it would be a little bigger. And that's kind of where I am with Guinevere and the Divinity Factory. The amount of money spent in comparison to the amount of money brought in, and I'm definitely taking a loss on this one. I take full responsibility for it. I've done my best to bring everyone a product that they love. But at the end, the main person I have to keep happy is me. I have to feel good about the art I put out there. And in looking at these lettered pages, I do feel very positive. Like, I'm proud to be presenting this thing. So I thought maybe we'd go through it page at a time here and see what people thought. So, page 1. Here we got our main character. She's walking into this palatial mansion. There will be some changes, just so you know. But I really like the way page 1 looks. We got the music notes, and we're using captions for her thoughts, which makes sense because she is basically the narrator. In terms of the dialogue, I wrote the script for this so long ago that I basically forgot what the dialogue was. So as I was reading over it, I was marking out to my own work. I'm like, oh, I like that. That's pretty good. So again, it makes me happy. So I hope some of you out there in comic book land, particularly my backers, most importantly my backers, are entertained by it. But the first line of dialogue we have from this butler who's offering her champagne, and she is a country figure. I decided to make her a country figure, kind of small town rural hick, because I liked the juxtaposition of, it kind of has this My Fair Lady element, where she's a bit of a fish out of water, but the patron wizard, Francis Gatz, who she's going to find and seek magic instruction. He's going to instruct her in more than magic. He's going to instruct her in life. And so we're going to kind of get a bit of My Fair Lady to that. But one thing he's not going to try and take away from her is her kind of southern outlook and her southern accent. Because as he's going to explain here in issue 1, if you are growing up in this world in a big urban center, you have kind of been trained to think one very specific way. And these people cannot do magic. They've lost the ability to do magic because they've lost the ability to conceive of a world different than the one that they're interacting with every day. And so he has to he expects his applicants for magic instruction, whatever you want to call them, to be from these small rural towns, because these people have the freedom to think more for themselves. And that's what he's looking for. He's looking for free thinkers. And here, and with this book, I really use magic as kind of a metaphor for, idea space, things that can be conceived of. And if you can't conceive of an outcome, there's no way you can ever achieve it. As that saying goes, in order to, before you can achieve, you must believe. And that's one of the things that I'm exploring here with this story. So we have our character, she's coming in, and then we have this guy, who, by the way, if you hang out with me for a while, you'll meet a friend of mine named Paul, who I put in this comic book. So the guy hitting on this woman is my friend Paul. And I don't believe we ever actually, I think in the comic script I gave him the name Mark, but I don't know if he ever utters his name, so you can call him, oh yeah, no, there it is, right there. So I'm sorry, let me start over. My name is Mark, and you are looking for someone, if you'll excuse me. Going into page 2, note to the letterer to add more music notes, because she's gradually getting closer to the origin of the sound. And, if this were a movie, then the Foley noises of the party and the music would be there in every scene and every moment. So we should at least add them in here on the comic book. Now, page 2. This was the very first page that I asked anyone to draw. And when I was picking my letterer, back pre-Comicsgate days, I didn't think, gee, let me ask this person their political affiliations. I instead just asked them, hey, can you draw? And what I did was I chose a page from the script, and in this one, she's ascending the stairs, and we have Mark, the character, in the foreground. And what I don't tell you is that this page is entirely from Mark's point of view, but I kind of show you. And he's in the foreground. We're looking over his shoulder, and he's kind of all darked out here because this is his perception. So he is viewing her through this mildly inebriated, but very infatuated with her and her body and her looks. So he's got, the goggles on. He's just looking at her like, oh my God. And so that's what I wanted to see. And I wanted to see if a penciler could render that. I basically wrote to the pencilers, show me what you can do. Draw the sexiest back of a woman you possibly could. And Rod Looper 1, not only is that an amazing booty, but also I love the level of detail. Like all the other stuff he has going on in this scene with the bridge and people under the bridge and the party. And by the way, little special note, you see that figure there, like right under the fountain at the top of the stairs, wearing the hat? That is the person she's looking for, Francis Gatz. He's watching her every move because for him, this is a job interview. He wants to see how she interacts. He wants to see, if he gives her a task, can she complete it? And so in this particular circumstance, she's looking for him, and he wants to see how she goes about it. So I do have her giving some thoughts here, and he's being helpful as a man would when he's trying to get to know a woman. I can help you. I'm at this party every night. I know everyone. And her thoughts, men ever so generous to those they want to control. We're going to move the position of that thought bubble because that thought caption, there's no reason for it to come from her butt. Just so you know. Going into page 3. Red face, drink in hand, he'll soon be drunker than Cooter Brown. I was looking for ways, because obviously given that it is a written medium, I can't really convey too well the southern accent, and I didn't want to do a whole bunch of my sugars and stuff like that, so, I tried to put in some cute phrases, and this one, drunker than Cooter Brown, which apparently is an actual expression in the South, although I've never heard it. They don't tend to say that one around Dallas, Texas. But let's see. And by the way, page 2 and 3, interesting trivia note, were originally done by a different colorist. No, they are done by a different colorist. Because initially I wanted page 2 and 3 done by, incident. Yeah, so page 2 was my audition page. I commissioned the pencilers who were interested in the product to do page 2, and I paid each one their page rate for it, and then I went with the best guy, who was Rod. And then page 3, these are both splash pages, and I took them and I also had them printed up as prints that I could talk to people about the project and as well as sell them at comic book shows. And page 3 ended up outselling page 2, which surprised me because I would have thought, that ass would have been what people wanted to grab, but they really liked what was going on here in this page, the activity and seeing the face. And faces are magical, faces are kind of the seat of our emotions. So page 3 ended up being more popular than page 2, which surprised me. But here she is. She's at the top of the stairs. Oh, so in order to get the discussion material so I could talk to people, I had a colorist who was different than the colors we ended up going with for the rest of the book, because page 2 and page 3 were done long before the rest of the pages were penciled, inked, and colored. So now I have a little trivia note about this project. All right, and then she's walking into the party, and page 3, page 4, I'm going to have the letterer add more music notes, and particularly here where she's entering into the main party. I want there to be we need to understand it's loud in there. There's a lot of party, festive music atmosphere going on. And page 4, I'm trying to introduce people to the world in media res, as we like to say in the biz, where she is walking into this situation and we don't exactly know why she's there or what she's doing or what that party is. We have to figure out, in some ways as she's figuring out, but in other ways, the character knows way more than we do, but we basically have to play catch up. So here on page 4, I'm showing that this is a magical world where there's a lot of stuff going on, as well as what the expectations are. So here we have this woman who, I wrote in the script, is flying down the stairs and is just turning pirouettes in midair, which is what's kind of going on there on page 3. Although panel 3 rather, the problem with panel 3 though is that dialogue bubble just completely covers over my dancer spinning pirouettes. So I guess you're just going to have to visualize the action then. But he has essentially made the promise that he can take her to Francis Gatz, the man she is seeking. And she walks into this big festive party, and this woman is just flying down the stairs. Literally. And the thought bubble is that woman is literally hovering, and no one here seems to care. And there's this, so one, I'm showing you that the expectations of the world are, she knows that people can do magical, physics-defying activities. That doesn't surprise her. What surprises her is that you are kind of demonstrating this in front of other people because you want to keep it a secret. And in most urban fantasy settings, this has to be kept a secret. Because if not, you have to write a dramatically different world where now people understand that there's vampires and magic and all kinds of other things. So, and then we have his line, which is, "Now, that's not the craziest thing I've seen here," to which he responds, "Really?" And he goes, "There's a dungeon room here, too. I've seen a ton of things that are impossible to explain." She's thinking, sounds like a good place to find a mage. So I wanted to throw some kinkiness into my comic book. In my private life, I do hang out with these people on occasion and go to their parties. And, I wanted to put that in the comic book, if for titillation value, if nothing else. So I also had to decide, well, how am I going to show like a Kinkster party in a comic book without getting vulgar? And so that's where I came up with this. So I'll go ahead and read you this one. They're entering the party, and then we've got, "Art thou the Santa, Lord of the Elves, giver of presents?" To which he admits, "I am." And we've got Santa with the hat, with the gimp mask, all tied up, and she is now cluing you in. Kinksters reenacting Jesus' trial before the Sanhedrin. Now I've seen everything. And that, to me, I thought, wouldn't that be funny? Because, Kinksters are pretty irreverent people. They don't tend to be that religious. And so the idea of, enacting what is kind of a kinky scene out of, the story of Christ, where, he's being interrogated before the Sanhedrin and then handed over to the Romans to be whipped. Well, they might do that. And she steps forward, "Blasphemy! No one can possibly deliver all those presents in one night. He must pay for his lies." But see, instead of making it the literal Jesus, in this case, I've made it Santa Claus, who is somewhat of a Jesus-like figure. He's keeping track. He knows, have you been naughty? Have you been nice? He's giving presents, and look, not to throw stones. But I do know a lot of Christians, and many of them will treat God or their concept of the divine like Santa Claus. They're like, "Oh, I prayed to God for this to happen," and they just go on leading their lives and just, offer up wishes for stuff. And, I don't think that's necessarily the best way to look at the divine. So there's just this, I wanted this page just to be a den of iniquity that would be kind of both shocking and rather hilarious to the reader and somewhat embarrassing to my daughter. But, so she's looking around, and obviously there is no Francis Gatz, and, so she's asking Mark, like, hey, buddy. And, Mark, of course, has his reply here of, "Honestly, he's not the one that interests me." And then, this basically is revealing to her what she knew, which is just, this was some guy who was trying to get friendly with her. And so she, paid $6. She grabs him and casts a spell on him. And we're going to alter the lettering here a little bit to make it so that he's more entranced. And also we had to decide stylistically, we have her thought captions in boxes, and I think I want to keep those in boxes and have other people's spoken words be in bubbles. So I asked the letter to change that to a bubble there. And also, I think the letter needs to do some styles here to indicate that he is falling into a trance. And so she casts a spell on him, and he reveals, lo and behold, he does not know where Francis Gatz is. And this is, to be, just kind of my joke between myself and my friend Paul, because Paul, he's finds gorgeous women just mesmerizing. And, he'll later disclaim and go, no, what? Her? No, not at all. But there have been times where he's just in the moment, and now I just show him this comic page and go, does it feel about like that? But here, Guinevere is now pointing over and basically punishing him for his attempt. So I guess this is a bit of a Me Too moment manifestation here, where she directs him to go get his head shaved by the fetish Nazi over in the corner while she storms out of the room. And at long last, we go to page 7, where we finally get to meet the object of her quest here, Frances Gatz. And I want to take a minute to talk about where the idea for Frances Gatz comes from. This is a Gatsby reference. When The Great Gatsby comes into public domain in 2 years now, actually slightly less than 2 years, January 2021, I want to essentially make The Great Wizard Gatsby, which is an idea that my daughter finds very amusing. But it was something that was kind of in response to her and her appreciation for that novel. Like 18 months ago or so, we were having a conversation about Gatsby, and we're both writers. And so I decided, hey, what if I took him, and I already had this story in a different form, and like, what if I put him in this story? So here we have this kind of Gatsby-like figure, and people loved the whole spectacle of the big flapper party with magic involved. And so I knew that I had a successful property when I saw how wonderfully people reacted to it. But she enters into this party, and, she's got, her thoughts are very frustrated. How many rooms full of people does this place have? And, all right, so the next panel, I'm sure I'm going to catch some flack for. She says, I count 382 souls in this room, and not all of them have bodies, plus the main entrance and the dungeon, and however many more rooms are host to this. So how could she count that many people is of course, the question. And what I'm trying to show in this panel, and this is one of the nice things about being able to see what a character is thinking, she can do magic, and her magic manifests in certain ways. And one is she has two abilities, two main areas of influence. But the main one is mind and affecting people's mind. And one of the abilities, she's also got some of the abilities to affect her own mind and her own mental processes. And so that's how she's able to count this many people so precisely, so quickly. So she's in, people are having a good time, she's surveying the room, and then up comes Frances Gatz, who's frustrated and like the proverbial blind squirrel looking for a nut in the snow. So I have fun writing Southern characters. I think it was my upbringing. My dad, we used to go duck hunting and stuff, and he had all this country wisdom in him. And I must say, I like the notion. I like the initiation name you chose for yourself, Guinevere. Such a noble and regal name. Thanks. It was my old name from back when I was stripping. So I thought that would be, this was the backstory for the character, that she was not only kind of the small-town Southern girl, but she had a very rough background. But she learned through this rough background, she came in touch with someone who saw in her great potential and awakened the ability to do magic. So that is her backstory, which we're kind of alluding to in passing here. And we'll see a bit more of that when they go into the astral realm. So that's that page. And then on this page, he basically takes her back to his private sanctum. And so they're walking through this party past this couple that's getting frisky. And I have some friends of mine who are really high roller gamblers, and they love playing craps at the Rio. And they play craps at such high stakes that they get the presidential suite at the Rio, which is at the very top. And they've had me up there a few times for when they're throwing a party and whatnot. And one of the interesting things about the presidential suite on the Rio is it opens up into the nightclub, which I believe is called the Voodoo Lounge. And it's kind of cool in that, you've got this suite with all these rooms, and then you open up this room and you're like, oh, and in here is a nightclub. So I thought that was neat, and so I borrowed that for this concept of where Francis Gatt's private sanctum opens up straight off the dance floor. So he takes her, and I had to decide, okay, one, this is set modern day. There have been clues throughout. If you look at the cars in the opening few pages, some of them were modern. So, but some people think it's set in the 20s. It's not. And here's another example of that is I had to decide what the wizard sanctum would look like. And it's got all this doors memorabilia. Because I was thinking, what would a wizard be looking for? But doors. The doors of perception, doors into other dimensions. So he's got all this doors stuff. Which, by the way, the initial band of the Doors was the Doors of Perception. So, and he's telling her here that he is going to take her into the spirit realm. And I got to do this cool reference to Break On Through, which is one of my favorite songs. I love that one. So, and, you know, the Doors were also big into drugs. So here he's putting some stuff in her champagne so that she can actually project to break on through. And, so we got this, and she's worried that under the influence of these drugs, she's going to do something embarrassing or whatnot. But he goes over the keyboard and he's playing, and she gets in the lotus position and says, "Good idea. I don't want to collapse and hurt myself. I know that song." So I, as a writer, you know, in a comic book medium, I had to go, okay, how am I going to put in Break On Through? So he responds, "Sing it to me." And you know, here she's singing just like a line here from Break On Through, but that coincides with, when we go to the next page, she astrally projects, she's broken on through to another dimension. And she's just floating through the ceiling. And now we see that she's this very battered version of, and younger version of herself. And here on panel 3, there's a guy in a library with a book, which is another Great Gatsby reference. I don't know if you remember back in the Great Gatsby. But there's this one room where there's a guy reading a book, and Nick Carraway, our main character, as they're looking around, and I think he was talking with a woman at that point, and they go into this library, and there's just a guy, I think with owlish glasses or something, reading a book. So that's a reference here back to the novel. And then, boom, Francis Gatz appears, but now he's also looking different. He's got this kind of Doctor Strange getup. And he's explaining to her that here in the spirit realm, we appear, well, let's see, what exactly is the word bubbles? One of the first things you have to learn is that your soul does not have a body to hide behind. Our true selves stand naked for all to see. So your true self is a wizard? Yes, an identity I have cultivated over several decades. So we get a bit philosophical here, but the whole story has a bit of philosophy to it. It's, you know, somewhat like The Matrix, and that what you're believing is very important, which is, of course, if we're talking about wizards, what they're believing is everything, right? Because before a wizard can cast a spell or manifest something in the real world, first he has to visualize it, he has to plan for it. So I feel that a wizard initiation, or if you're seeking to join a wizard covenant, it's going to be all about what is it you believe. And he goes on to explain, you know, your identity is defined by your past, just like everyone else. But it can be changed. And so here, he's kind of taking her out into the spirit world. And now we get to see another splash page. I have a lot of splash pages in this book. So here it is, the mansion, Francis Gatz's mansion in the spirit realm. And it is bathed in green light because that is, again, a Gatsby reference. The very last paragraph of The Great Gatsby opens with, Gatsby believed in the green light, the orgastic future that every year recedes before us. So his mansion is bathed in green light. The cars, incidentally, are you know, modern manufactured vehicles, so they don't have souls. So that's why they're all black voids here in the spirit realm. And we see some ghosts hanging out that have souls but no bodies. And in the car, I figured there was a real couple getting frisky, so we can see the outline of their souls through the car. And in terms of dialogue, yeah, she's commenting how beautiful it is and how much that the spirits and people, you know, they are flocking to this beacon of joy that is his mansion and why he likes throwing parties. So, all right, then we go on to the next page, and now he's taking her and he wants to take her to show her the city of Manhattan, essentially, in the spirit realm. So they're having to navigate through this abyss, and as they're doing that, they get approached by, dun dun dun, a spider demon, which when I initially wrote it, I was just like, oh, some kind of demon-y creature. But then when we made the music video, I actually had to dress as, I had to dress as Spider Demon, which was, that was interesting. Really heavy costume. I never thought I would have to do any of this comic book artwork in practical effects. But, so there's this demon that's following them, that's silently, that's sneaking up on them, and because it's coming from behind, they can't see, and so he has to shove her out of the way with a lookout and a snap, and then he uses his amulet to put up a ward in order to protect them. So when we get to page 14, he's putting her behind this ward as he says back, and we have the monster hissing. And then here, we get into some dialogue, which I hope isn't too clumsy. But says the spirit realm is like the ocean, vast, dark, and filled with plenty of monsters. Damn things are as disturbing as a pig's afterbirth. So I had to, again, sprinkle in some country phrases, and of course he's like, never quite thought of it like that. Is this city a war zone? And he's like, not quite. This is Manhattan, or what Manhattan looks like in the spiritual realm. So I think one of the things you're going to see in the city, and I think it kind of bears out a bit in real life, is that the large urban centers have a fair amount of, decay to them, both physical as well as one can think of it. It's like mental or psychic or spiritual. For instance, San Francisco was recently said to be host to one of the largest and most disgusting or whatever poorest slums in the world, which is crazy because we're talking about San Francisco, surrounded by all that wealth in the United States, no less. And we've got this interesting view from under the belly of the beast, who can't get through that ward, so he's just there and he's looking at them and he's licking his chops, kind of thing. And here's where he's now kind of explaining that she has to go to the city. That's no accident. No one who can wield magic has spent much time in urban areas. Why is that? A mind trained to comply to rules laid down by others is incapable of creating an alternative reality. That's funny. When I was a kid, city people made me feel so dumb, but the ones who flee wisdom are those who feel they already have the answers. I do like the dialogue. I hope you readers and viewers out there enjoy it as well, because I wrote the script, and then I just got so used to working with the artwork without the script that now that I'm going back and looking at pages that have words on them, I'm like, oh, you know what? That dialogue's pretty good. And so we continue with, because you allowed your concept of self to be determined by city folk, I feel that's the best place to start your journey. So then he gives her his amulet. Take this and go into the city. See the world through new eyes and learn your place in it. Thank you. I won't let you down. And now he's looking up at the monster, and do be careful, my dear. There are creatures in the city far worse than our friend here. And now we have this panel on page 15 where she's walking out of the party, and I love it. We've got this sideways Dutch angle to it. The inking was great. Diana said she really wanted the dress to stand out, so she did a good job there. And now she's wearing a necklace, which, we're dealing with a magic amulet, so it doesn't have to look the same for everybody. But in the spirit realm, it was kind of this large, Doctor Strange-like necklace. But when she has it back in the real world, now it is transformed into this choker, which glows a bit. And so coming up on something I thought might be clever. We'll see what you think of the next page. So again, Francis Gatz has given her this amulet, but he didn't explain what it does. Because, again, he's testing her. And so she wants to see if it can read minds. So in panel 1, she's activated the amulet, and she's looking, and she sees this ghostly couple, but she doesn't even notice them because she's instead so focused on, can she read minds? And like, this thing's all hat and no cattle. It couldn't read a single mind. But as she deactivates the amulet, we see this kind of spiritual couple fading away, because the amulet's ability tends to lie in giving her access to spirit magic and access to the spirit realm. But she doesn't know that yet, because she's never really done stuff in the spirit realm. Her specialties are mind magic and somewhat with life magic. But spiritual realm is this completely new world to her. And so she's unprepared for the things that the amulet shows her. And so she's walking out, and boom, now we see at heart she is a country girl. There's a gray Chevy pickup, the likes of which I rode many an hour when I was growing up as a kid in Texas. My dad would take me all over the U.S. in trucks much like that one, including one that specific truck is modeled on, which he called the Gray Ghost. Now we get to page 17, so now she's out in the real world. Had to put the flapper dress away. Actually, what we learned from the last page was that actually wasn't her dress. She got it from a store, and that she intended to return it to the next day. And so here she is, just kind of walking around the streets of Manhattan in street clothes. And again, as we've discussed, she doesn't have access to a lot of resources. So she's walking by, there's this construction site. This construction worker is doing a cat call down to her. Hey, baby, what are you doing later? And, she's just like, she's having a frustrating day. She walks in, and now we find out that she's staying in a hostel, and that they made her go and buy groceries for the hostel with the hostel's money, but she had to leave her cell phone behind because they're like, if we're handing you money, you got to leave something valuable. And so we're seeing how humbly she is staying in the city of Manhattan. And then she's going up and she's saying hi to her roommate, Monica, who's based on, there's a real woman I know named Monica who tends to be, anyway, interesting. Let's put it that way. And again, the amulet is going to give her another vision into the spirit world and how we can see how different things are. And so I have her roommate here who's reading, I've chosen the book 1984. So that's certainly a book that a lot of people are talking about with Orwell and this massive society. And now we're getting the introduction of the Divinity Factory, of this kind of evil organization that is kind of superimposed, this evil spiritual superimposition of this monolithic factory or society that is kind of guiding things in this sinister and pernicious way. And so she sees, the physical book is 1984, but because the amulet is active, she's in the spirit realm. And so she's seeing a different title. She's seeing what is on the cover, a factory society. And she's thinking, a factory society? No way, this came from the bookstore. And she opens it, and it's got this spell, and it says, the Factory of Progress. And Monica, meanwhile, was like, what are you freaking out over? It's basically just 1984 in paperback. But we see on the pages, there's a woman sacrificing a child, and it actually forms a sentence, the Factory of Progress demands workers who do not question. And, she's shook, to use the modern parlance. And so she's like, sorry, I need to go for a walk, because she knows she's kind of freaking out here. And, she walks by the lady who sent her shopping, like, you staying for dinner? And yes, and she's, again, she's just going out for air, and she walks by that construction worker who called down to her, and there he is calling down to her again. Oh, she's back. The ass of my dreams, get up here, girl. And she's like, damn it, and then, I wanted to turn and be surprised, and boom, 2-page spread with this big moment of now we get the city of Manhattan, this construction site, as viewed through the spirit world. And we see that there's this big succubus there, which is the succubus that made it onto the variant cover. And that it's the succubus and the energy that this succubus is giving off, as well as kind of the other elements of spiritual decay and zombies and whatnot, is this spiritual activities. The activities of this realm are bleeding over into the real world. And that is influencing these construction workers. And so she's able to see the kind of cause and effect of the spiritual decay on the physical world. And this really nice 2-page spread. I was proud of how that came out. And then page 22, she now collapses. But again, it was just a hellscape vision. And she's now back in the real world. And she doesn't know what's going on. And then she sees, oh, wow, look at that. There's the version of her from the astral realm, this younger, victimized version of herself being chased by her old abusive boyfriend. this is how I'm working in elements to the backstory. I'm not having her like explain like, oh, I had a boyfriend a while ago. He beat me. He was a jerk. I'm trying to work it in these little pieces that are kind of action related, so the audience can see it. And so she's chasing after the spiritual version of herself, and boom, there we go. Final page is New York Criminal Court in the spirit realm, and she can see the spiritual decay, and boom, there it is. This is the presentation of our villain, the Divinity Factory, this kind of spiritual force which is imposed and controlling over this large urban area, and it has everybody in its maw, and essentially the justice system has been corrupted by it. And it is, if you can really zoom in and drill down there are two cops dressed as, chain devils dressed as police officers leading a black teenager up the steps of the criminal justice system and into the maw of this evil creature. And that is the conclusion of our first issue, the introduction of the evil that is the Divinity Factory that she then has to oppose in issues 2, 3, 4, and 5.